Well, hi, everybody. This is Janet Oliver, and I am with Plan for Learning in Minneapolis. I'm a neurodevelopmental specialist and have been for over 20 years. And my interest and mission is really to understand and study and appreciate the wonders of development, human development throughout the lifespan. And today we have with us Rhea Brashear, who is a marvelous friend of mine, but also an incredible guest because she comes from a background in early childhood. And today our topic's going to be on our early childhood, the sanctity of early childhood, and how important it is to appreciate and to even protect it for normal development, because I think often that is not happening. Rhea has a master's in science in early childhood services. She's a Montessori teacher, as I used to be, and she's also a neurodevelopmental specialist, as I am also. So we have a lot of things that interact. We've been together, we've known each other for over a decade. And she works, her own company is Start Right Educational Services, which services the Florida Panhandle and Southern Georgia in all kinds of ways for developmental programming in many different environments. So welcome, Rhea. We're so glad you're here.
Hi, Janet. It's a pleasure to be with you. It's so amazing that from a sultry day in South Georgia, we're connecting on such an important topic. And it's so precious to me that children are being forgotten. Our society is right now in the midst of a huge conflict about equity. And I think that my recent finishing of a master's degree in early childhood services has just brought to me even more clarity about what a disparate time it is in education. And so much of our public school system and education in America is really about social justice. And I don't want to get political because I want to go back to what is really real, and that is development. And this seems to be lost. What is really equal in education is that every child develops the same. And we know
over the same, I always like to clarify that because people misunderstand. We don't mean everybody develops exactly the same way at the same time every single time, but every child will go through different periods, whether those are fulfilled or not. All humans do, right?
Right. So no matter what country you're in, what language you speak, or how you look, our bodies do the same things. And that's why it is a very reliable tool to use in early childhood. But so much of what's happening in our educational realm is about cognitive development and not education. They're two very different
yeah,
things.
I think a lot of people think children are just a blank slate. And in some ways, yeah, they are kind of. They need to learn everything that they need to learn. But that is within a framework of a human development that we already have and that everybody has. Mm-hmm. So what would you suggest is ways that people can start appreciating what is the developmental needs of early children? What are, like, why don't you name your top 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever? And what would, if you could change anything, what would you change?
Well, that's a very big question. It's one I've spent a lot of time thinking about. And when I developed my own special needs preschool, I really had to think about what was the synthesis of what I thought was most important for children. And it really was this idea about movement and getting back to the developmental concept that movement inward, outward is a really important part of what's missing. So much of what's happening today for education is about the frontal lobe developing this ability to think, and it's thinking that's not connected to anything. Learning about information.
Abstract. You're talking about abstract versus like learning in your body.
Right. And so creating environments that really respect and honor a child's purpose in the early years of development. And I'm talking about birth to 3 and 3 to 6 as very generalized, specific time periods, because these have got very different internal focus. The drive of the young child doesn't change depending upon where they are. It's still this internal focus. And birth to 3 is all about movement. And I really think that 3 to 6 is about control. So it's just organizing the body to move and being able to do that reliably. That's what the sucking, the rolling over, the crawling, the standing, the walking is all about in the first year. And then the next 2 years are really about being able to organize that reliably. Oh, I can run now. I can stop.
I
Running
can
and stop.
climb, I can hop, I can, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right, that kind of thing. And then the second part of that development is, okay, now I can do this around other people. I can be reliable in my own needs. I
I can
know my own
synchronize
way.
with others if somebody does. A lot of play and a lot of that is a back and forth. It's a rhythmic interaction, and I think that does come out of movement, and we often miss that. Yeah.
Right. So much of what's happening in education for early childhood is really around watering down what's happening in later elementary years. I don't want to be contrary, but I really am very, very lukewarm on this idea of having STEM education or STEM curriculum for toddlers, because it's not really the drive at that young age for the science and technology and engineering portion of a child's day. That technology should really be about how they're working, not what's happening outside.
Well,
Some of
what
this
I find it kind of interesting right now, though, because here we're in, a lot of people are doing the homeschooling because of the COVID, the pandemic. I find that what I'm hearing from a lot of people is that although they're doing it all online, it makes it so much shorter that they're actually doing a lot more. They're project oriented or outside oriented, a lot more stuff, except for the closing of playgrounds, which has been huge for a lot of families and really devastating, because a lot of places in the cities don't have places for children to play. If they don't have a playground, they don't have a place to go. And so this has been kind of monumental. So this has been a real interesting time of looking at how this is going to affect development. And I think it will, because, it's been, almost a half a year now that people have had to live with this sort of thing. This is tough. Yeah.
Well, children at this young age do sort and they do stack and they do things, but I think about those puzzle spheres where can you slot stars and circles and squares into them, and that's one type of shape sorting, and that's important, but not from the idea of being able to then abstract, oh, this is a prism and this is a different type of shape, and we're going to classify the ones that have round edges and the ones that have pointy edges. That's not really the important part of that activity for the birth to 3 child. That's really about motor development, eye-hand control, the 3-dimensionality of objects. The 3 to 6 time is when we get more into the vocabulary development and whatnot. And I know of educational methods like Montessori and Reggio and Waldorf that allow all this type of exploration in a very open-ended kind of way. But I really want to get back to looking at curriculums and developmental environments that really honor the movement, because there is now a tendency for digital devices, for sedentary learning, for a lot of different types of learning, and we're missing the sandbox, the sunshine, and the swing sets. These seem so old-fashioned, but I'm telling you, it's the missing piece that children don't get enough of. We have taken away, as you said, the playgrounds. Homes have got smaller and smaller backyards. There's just less of this ability to move freely and to use all of that's around us to help inform the body of how to move. And our work, our shared work in neurodevelopment has just kind of enlightened me that the brainstem forward is so important. And
one of the areas too in that is like pushing and pulling and carrying and all the things that really humans were developed to do, to grow. I mean, our joints and our bodies need the challenges of these hard things. That's why toddlers love to push everybody around and they like to do all these things. They need that push energy to be able to learn control, to learn when to stop pushing. You got to learn how to push. So it's interesting that we haven't really, we always try to stop children from doing these kinds of things. And I think that it has undermined some of our coordination with each other. And like you said, it's kind of that stuffing from top down is not really the way people learn, and it never has been. And I think that it's getting younger and younger, as you're saying, and that we are, I still hear people say, it doesn't matter if you crawl, it doesn't matter if you do any of that. Well, one little thing in your development may not stop you from having a life, obviously, but every piece of development, typical development, holds a gift, holds a treasure chest of other things that's connected to it that could make a difference. That makes it easier, or makes other things learning a little bit easier. They're all little pieces, but they're all important.
I think what's been the most eye-opening for me was the research I did during my master's, and I found out that Child Trends has discovered that 1 in 5 kids in America is being diagnosed with a learning disability. And this is coming at younger and younger ages, and we see the rise in ADD and dyslexia and other types of disabilities for learning at much younger ages. And why is that? We've put all this push towards readiness and early educational readiness and racing to learning. But if all of this emphasis for cognitive development of learning ability has gotten us to where 1 in 5 kids in America is being diagnosed, then what are we doing in early development to really look at what does it take to make a child ready to learn? And I think this movement piece has been forgotten. And I also want to just highlight that if you've been diagnosed with some disability, then you are 2 deviations from the norm. If you go back to statistics, that's moving 2 points away from whatever the norm is. But to be diagnosed, you have to reach a threshold. Well, if you're here and if this is norm and then this is the threshold of being 2 deviations, what about all these children that are leaning towards having these differences that are not typically developing, but because they don't meet the threshold, they're not getting services. Mm-hmm. But yet a teacher has to now deal with not just the 5, but the other ones as well. So
well, I can say as an older adult that I spent my entire early childhood outside. I mean, all hours. I mean, I was out there all the time. I never was inside. And then as I got older and I was in that second period of time, I was out again, out in the woods, out and playing. And we had like 3 recesses a day. Right. When I was young, we'd have a morning one, a noon one, and an afternoon one, because I think they understood, especially, I hate to be sexist, but I think boys needed even more than girls getting out. But I tended to be one of those girls who needed to get out. And if I hadn't had that, I don't think I would have functioned well at all. I think I would have had a very, very hard time. I felt almost like outdoors defragged my system. It made me be able to settle. It
does. The grounding of the earth can do that. My children are grown now. They're college age and actually older. So they missed the digital bombardment. They were already in middle school when digital devices became so integrated in our society. And I can say happily that my kids may have been some of the last ones to not be so controlled by digital devices. So we did have lots of sandbox and outdoor time and swing sets, and that was really important to me. And I made sure that that was a big part of how I raised them. But that was before I became a developmental specialist, and now even more so. And I continue to visit schools as a consultant and work with private clients who don't know how to do these kinds of things. It's a foreign idea to be outside. And so, go ahead.
I just want to say that we're getting near our end of our time. So whatever you're going to say, wrap that up and that'd be great. Thanks.
Okay. I just want to encourage people who are looking at early education and making policies and making decisions for programs to really factor in that movement is more important than maybe they thought beforehand. They could probably save some money by buying a sandbox versus a new computer series. And I think honoring what is happening to the child naturally for a millennium is really more important than trying to put more cognitive development where motor development should be the precedent.
We are a motor species. We have to move, and moving is learning and living. So thank you so much for being with us, Ray, and we'll be seeing you soon. We're doing a series with you. So we thank you for your time today. Thanks.